All right, folks. Jeremy Brand here, MMAsucka.com. I'm here with BFL President Jay Goshani. We got another one, 3 questions for the president. Here we go. Kick things off with a bang. BFL Fight Week coming up next week, I guess. It's crazy that it's almost February already. I got a few questions for you here today, Jay. I will ask you the first and foremost one. I know last year there were talks about BFL expanding outside the Lower Mainland. You guys have done shows in Victoria, obviously up in the Okanagan. But is there a plan still for say 2024 to expand outside of the Lower Mainland?
We are contemplating Vegas. It's a project we've been working out for like over a year now. So um, it's just doing pro fights in Nevada is a little bit complicated because they have to drug test every single pro fighter on the card, and that cost goes to the promotion. So that's kind of what it's been. Um, we've been contemplating to see if it's worth the extra cost besides having like to take some of our production staff over there. But if we are doing a show out of town, the next one will likely be our third event this year in Vegas if we do decide to go out of Vancouver.
Wow. And I'm guessing that if you do Vegas, it'll probably be the biggest card BFL has ever put on.
It depends on every time you try to do like the biggest, we would plan to make it BFL 81. I think the biggest card we've ever done will be BFL 80. So
Okay.
I don't know. Probably it'll be a big card, but it would be Canada versus USA, so it'll be a different type of card.
You've done that before, Canada versus US. Very interesting. Interesting to hear that take that it, could potentially go to Las Vegas. I don't know if I'd make the trek, but I'd try to because I've been at almost every other BFL event. As in terms of, I guess, question number two, then, to stemming from that, in terms of the Lower Mainland, then, are we sticking with the Harbor Convention Center from here on out, or will we see, a lot of people still ask, are the casino shows going to be a thing again?
Right now in the Lower Mainland, none of the casinos are doing MMA.
Okay.
So if we do a show elsewhere, it might be at the Vancouver Convention Center, which seats about 2,000 people. But with us nowadays going on like Thursday nights, mostly because of ratings on Fight Pass, it's not like a Friday, Saturday show, and there's a lot of conventions going on during the week. So I think while we're in for BFL 79, that's coming up, BFL 80 probably at Convention Center, 81, 30% chance ends up being in Las Vegas.
30%. Not the highest of percentages, but again, like you said, it's a cost, sort of a cost-effective thing, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Sanctioning in Nevada is a little bit, a lot more expensive than doing it anywhere else, I would say.
Is there plans ever to travel outside of British Columbia then in Canada?
Yeah. We wanted to do a show in Alberta, Ontario, but there's factors with there's a lot of stuff involved, so we kind of have to pick and choose where we go.
Is it because of the
Uh,
other promotions?
Not necessarily, but I mean, again, ratings, right? I mean, there's a show on Fight Pass in Montreal now, and then kind of there is shows in like Ontario, and there's shows in obviously Alberta, and you don't want to be like going too close to each other in one territory. It just affects ratings, right? It's more television.
100%. Let me ask you about that show then. Obviously, I had that interview with Dan Kayach. Samurai MMA 9 is this Friday night. How do you see that fight playing out with your super welterweight champion, Dan Kayach? Because obviously, I know you saw the interview, but the guy's had many different opponent changes here, and on 4 days' notice, who the heck knows if the fight will even actually play out?
I think first it was scheduled to fight Danny Millette, And then they had fight of the year between Danny Millett and Jonathan Ramsey. Ramsey is the Samurai champion. Then it got switched to Ramsey. Both those guys were strikers, and I think it was going to be a tough fight for both of them versus Dan, just because of the distance management, the way he fights. His opponent that he has now coming up is a good striker, 17-8 from Mexico. Um, I think again the case is because he likes to stand on the feet. It's going to be almost an impossible type of matchup versus Dan. Basically, for the only person on the regional scene that could compete versus Dan would be Jordan Mean, and Jordan Mean is not a regional guy. He's just back on the regional scene. So that's the fight somebody should try to make. That's the only fight that makes sense in Canada outside like the UFC Bellator one. It has to be Dan versus Jordan Mean. That's the only fight.
Could you see Battlefield putting that on?
We are trying, but I mean, if because of contractual agreements or dates, Dan could go and take that fight elsewhere just to find out, because that's a UFC belt. That's a big league fight that you could now make on the regional scene. Otherwise, both those guys are good for anybody else.
All right, question number 3. Speaking of that, because your welterweight, super welterweight champion is fighting elsewhere. There's a title on the line. There's a couple titles on the line on your next card. Obviously, we got the main event. There's the Rodrigo. I don't know whether that's an interim title. Is that an interim title, or is that for the championship?
It's a different weight class because Dan has the 170 and 75 belt.
So isn't Rodrigo's fighting at a different weight class on this next card then?
This is for the first ever BFL 165-pound title.
Okay, so that's interesting. Because I was going to ask Dan about that fight, actually, because obviously Dan and Rodrigo have history, and they were expected to compete against each other. So then let me ask you that. By the end of 2024, obviously there's guys that you think will move to that next level, next tier, possibly UFC, maybe another big promotion. Who are some up-and-coming guys in the pro rankings that you could see hold straps or take straps from some of your current champions?
Well, we got, main event, Maxime Souzy versus Radley Silva, right? That's kind of like a 50-50 fight everybody could win. But if you look, because we have divisions and there's rankings for a reason. So if you look down, Gagan Gill is fighting Caleb from Mexico. Those guys could both compete for the title. It's not just them, but if you look farther down, Nicolette, he's fighting. I mean, he could even end up being a champion within 12 months. And he's not even, he's 7 fights down the card. So, every division kind of, so you could see, in that division, Gagan could fight for the title. Well, Jamie Suraj, we're waiting for some news. He's in that division. Nicolette's in that division. Everybody, the divisions are stacked, and these guys are all young. It's not like a journeyman fighters. They could all be on the contender series, right? That's the 45s. 35s is a little bit different because, well, Suri, the four-time champion, has gone to the UFC, and you got a fight between Ali, who's fought for the title twice, and then you got Ty Wilson, who lost to Cole, that went to the UFC and BFL in 2019. So these are 2 guys who fought for the title before, but just because of the style, you got a guy waiting like Gio. He hasn't shown that he's complete yet. He's been working on his wrestling and submissions, but just the way, because he fights on the feet, he could beat anybody, right? So if he ends up showing that he can make 135 pounds first, he has to prove that before he ever gets a title shot. He has to make the weight. He could be in line, and he could be a big underdog versus Ali or Ty, but he could easily beat both of them just because of his style, right?
Yeah.
And at the 170, we don't really know because Diane has been cleaning out that division in Canada. The only people he hasn't beat are people who are not willing to fight him.
Yeah.
That's the only reason, right? So 165 is more catered to guys like Dario, Rodrigo, guys that are not 170, might potentially make 155. So that's why we're introducing the 165 division for a bunch of guys who are just a little bit smaller than welterweight.
Okay, fair enough. Then, okay, so you spoke about Geo there. I know I said three questions, but stuff is stemming off of your answers. You spoke about Geo there, and on your Instagram stories, you say that, if he finishes a guy in the first 35 seconds, then he'll get a title shot. He is ranked right below that pivotal point of, he's ranked at number 3. So if he wins, should he not necessarily be next in line anyway?
He's got to prove he can make the weight.
Okay.
Right. So there's a lot goes. Just imagine you're the champion. Let's say Ali wins, Ty wins, right?
Yeah,
You say Gio's next. The first thing they're going to say is, can he make the weight?
of course.
Right. So he's got to prove. We're going to see how he looks at the weigh-in, like looks at the weigh-ins this time. Mind you, he's fighting at 140 this time,
Okay.
but that's not because of him. I think both him and his opponent wanted to do like 140, but he has to prove he can make the weight. He has to look impressive. Let's say he goes in and he grinds out a decision because he's got a tough opponent, right? 3-1. And he doesn't look too impressive, then no, he doesn't get a title shot. We would bring in somebody that's not within the roster, or somebody lower down within the roster that has like a super good performance on the card.
Completely makes sense. All right, so those bonuses, they're enticing to the fighters. They might get in their heads a little bit, like actually Gio said. He wanted to throw that Superman punch, but he ended up throwing the flying knee instead. How do these, for people that are looking on the Instagram stories, they obviously see what the finishing sequence is for the bonus, but how do these come to play? Like, how do they get picked?
So a couple of things. On the five, the first 5 fights on the main card, it's not just the finishing bonus. They also get an additional $1,000 if they finish it within a certain time. So there's 2 bonuses for those guys, and all 12 pro fights have a finishing bonus. So what happens with those is we reach out to a bunch of different coaches. For example, a lot of those striking bonuses, I talked to Matteo Vogel's coach, Crew Jeff, like a while ago. I said, give me a couple of moves that you think is interesting. He goes like Anderson up elbow. We talked in our internal meeting every Friday that we have at Battlefield. They're like, okay, let's throw that in, right? And the capoeira stuff, like we asked some people, and most of them are tough submissions, right? And then for like Twister, like Nicolette said, if you give me the Twister, I'll get it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we go, okay, well, that's pretty impossible. We'll give you the chance to
Yeah.
do it, right? That's why his is only at 500, but because he probably knows he has a chance to get it.
Yeah.
The higher it is, the most difficult it is. But last time, I think Navid almost got, it was 5 body, 5 slams, and he was at 3. So
Yeah.
everybody was sweating in the production truck. We probably got to pay this guy $3,000. So we'll see what happens, right?
Well, we're going to find out next week. Battlefield Fight League 79, a big card coming up. I'm not sure whether we'll be able to talk on Tuesday next week or not prior to that card, but this does it for episode 2, 3 questions with the president. Jay, thanks for joining me today, man. Good luck in the coming week. Hopefully we keep all those fights together, man.
Sounds good, brother. I'll talk to you soon.